Sometimes I look back at that time, just a few months ago honestly, and I wonder how I could have been so blind. I was comfortable. Too comfortable maybe. My name is Olivia. I'm in my late 40s and for 20 years I thought I had the life. A beautiful home, a stable career and a husband Ethan who was, well, dependable. Thought. Predictable. We were the couple everyone pointed to at parties and said, they have it figured out. We weren't fiery or dramatic. We were settled. And I loved it. Then about 3 weeks ago this little earthquake hit my perfectly manicured world, except it wasn't a violent shake. It was just a whisper. Ethan had mentioned his childhood friend Alex was coming to stay for a few days. Alex was an old college buddy, someone Ethan hadn't seen in maybe a decade. They had grown up together, the kind of friends who knew each other's terrible haircuts and embarrassing teenage crushes. I'd only met Alex once years ago and he was sweet, a little nervous, a quiet guy. When Alex arrived I noticed the tension right away. Ethan was too jovial. His smile was wider than usual, his laughter a touch too loud. He kept throwing his arm around Alex, calling him old buddy a lot. Alex, on the other hand, was pale. He had dark circles under his eyes and his handshake with me was weak. He avoided my gaze and when he did look at Ethan, it was with this strange mix of pity and terror. The first day was awkward. The two of them were mostly in the den whispering about old times. I kept offering drinks and snacks, trying to be the perfect hostess, but the atmosphere felt thick like humidity before a thunderstorm. That night I was rinsing dishes in the kitchen. Ethan was in the garage supposedly getting Alex's suitcase out of the car. Alex walked in and I immediately knew something was wrong. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking at the floor, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Olivia, he started, his voice barely audible. I turned the water off. Everything okay, Alex? Did you need anything? He took a shaky breath. I really need to talk to you. For just a minute. Alone. My heart started to tap against my ribs. The casual setting of my spotless kitchen suddenly felt like an interrogation room. I leaned against the counter. Hey, what's up? He shuffled his feet. This is going to sound crazy. And I'm so sorry. I know I shouldn't be the one telling you. But I can't live with it anymore. He's my friend, but you're good people, Olivia. You don't deserve this. The drama was mounting, and I felt a chill run down my spine despite the warmth of the room. I remember thinking, what could it possibly be? A secret crush? A petty rivalry from their college days? Nothing prepared me for his next two sentences. He stepped closer, his eyes finally locking onto mine, and they were full of genuine aching guilt. He lowered his voice to a frantic, urgent whisper. Ethan isn't who you think he is, Olivia. He's been lying to you for years. About everything important. And then he said the one word that made my stomach drop out. The farm. I blinked, processing the absurdity. The farm? Alex, we don't own a farm. What are you talking about? The farm, he repeated, his voice strained. He still has it. The family inheritance. He told you he sold it to pay off his student loans, didn't he? He told you that 10 years ago. I felt the blood drain from my face. My mind instantly flew back to that exact conversation a decade ago. Ethan had been upset, stressed about his business degree debt, and then suddenly he wasn't. He told me the last piece of his family's inheritance, a small, dilapidated acreage his grandfather owned, was finally sold to a developer and the money had cleared his name. It was a moment of relief, a shared triumph. He did sell it, I stammered, feeling shaky. He showed me the bank transfer statements. He paid off the loans. We celebrated. Alex shook his head slowly, sadly. No, he didn't sell it, Olivia. He still owns it. He rents it out through a shell company. He's been collecting rent from a commercial nursery for 10 years. All that money never went to the loans. It's been going somewhere else. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. I couldn't breathe. My perfect, solid, dependable Ethan? The man who clipped coupons and checked every receipt? He was a liar. A huge, long-term liar? No, Alex, you must be mistaken. Why would he do that? Why keep a secret like that? I asked, my voice barely a thread of sound. Alex's eyes darted toward the hallway, a genuine panic in them. I can't say more right now. He's coming back. Just, please check the tax records. The municipal records. The name on the deed is slightly different. A trust. But if you look up the address, Just promise me you'll check. Suddenly, the garage door whirred open. Alex straightened up instantly, his whole demeanor shifting back to the quiet, nervous friend. He grabbed a glass of water from the counter, his hand visibly shaking. Ethan walked in, smiling brightly. Hey, what are you two doing in here? Alex, pal, I got your bag. It's light. Only staying a few days, huh? Good. Means we can spend more time golfing. He clapped Alex on the back. Alex flinched slightly under the pressure but recovered quickly. Yeah, just a short visit, Ethan. Just catching up. He glanced at me, and in that fleeting look there was an appeal, a plea for understanding. I managed a strained smile. I was just making sure Alex had everything he needed, I said, the words feeling foreign and heavy on my tongue. Inside, a siren was wailing, and the solid ground I stood on had just turned into quicksand. I felt dizzy, nauseous. All I could think about was that number. 10 years. 10 years of hidden money, of a lie I had celebrated. If he could lie about something that big, something involving a family inheritance and tens of thousands of dollars, what else was he lying about? The shock of the revelation was a physical blow. It wasn't just about the money, it was the sheer betrayal of trust. The man I shared a bed with, the man who was supposed to be my partner, was leading a double financial life. I need a moment to process this, and I want to know what you're thinking right now. Drop a comment below right now and tell me where and when you're watching this video and what you think I should do next. Confront him immediately or investigate first. The rest of the evening was a blur. Every time Ethan spoke, every time he smiled, I saw a flashing sign over his head that read, "Liar." When he held my hand on the sofa, I felt a deep, sickening recoil. That trusted hand, the one I relied on, was clutching a decade-old secret. The farm wasn't a story, it was a hidden vault. I excused myself early, claiming a headache. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I could hear their muffled laughter from downstairs. Two friends bonding over shared history. Except one of them was carrying a truth that was currently shredding my entire adult life. I knew with absolute certainty that I wouldn't sleep until I checked the records, just as Alex had urged. The comfortable quiet of my life was officially over. It had been replaced by a deafening, terrifying silence, the silence of a major secret about to explode. The seed of doubt had been planted, and it was already growing into a terrifying, thorny vine. The immediate shock was wearing off, leaving behind a cold, hard determination. I wouldn't confront him yet. I had to know. I had to see the proof Alex promised. The whisper was just the warning. The evidence would be the verdict. That night, lying next to Ethan, the man I had married and trusted for 2 decades, was perhaps the longest, coldest night of my life. He slept soundly, his breathing slow and steady, the picture of contentment. I watched him, and for the first time I didn't see my husband. I saw a puzzle piece that suddenly didn't fit the picture anymore. Alex's whispered apology, the farm. He still has it. Played on an endless loop in my mind. To understand why this farm secret was such a monumental betrayal, you need to understand our foundation. Ethan and I were always transparent about money. We were raised to be practical. When we got married, we sat down with a legal pad and wrote out every debt. His was the biggest. The student loan for his executive MBA, which was considerable. When he inherited that small acreage, essentially a wooded lot with a crumbling old barn from his distant great-aunt, we agreed immediately, liquidate it. It had zero sentimental value for him. The plan was clear. Sell the land, pay off the high-interest student debt, and we could finally start saving seriously for our retirement. When he told me 10 years ago with great relief that the sale had gone through, it was the moment we crossed the finish line in terms of debt. It was a promise of a future solid and secure. He showed me what looked like legitimate documentation, a settlement statement, a final bank deposit, and we opened a bottle of expensive champagne to celebrate being debt-free. We put the whole thing in a drawer and forgot about it. Or rather, I forgot about it. He apparently had been living the lie ever since. Ethan, my husband, the man who criticized me for leaving the lights on and insisted we drive 10 extra miles for a cheaper gas station, was running a secret long-term financial operation right under my nose. The irony was suffocating. Let me tell you a little about the man I thought I knew. Ethan is the embodiment of stability. He's a financial analyst. He meticulously tracks our budget down to the last dollar. He drives a reliable 10-year-old sedan, not because he can't afford better, but because he believes in maximum depreciation and efficiency. He is the rock, the anchor, the person I believed would never take a risk, especially not a moral one. This made Alex's confession not just shocking but inconceivable. The next morning Alex was still there. I was functioning on maybe 2 hours of fractured sleep. I came downstairs, forced a cheerful, "Good morning," and started the coffee. Ethan was reading the paper, looking perfectly normal, perfectly Ethan. Alex was nursing a mug of tea, looking like he'd slept just as poorly as I had. The dynamic between the three of us was bizarre. Ethan was oblivious, happy to have his buddy around. Alex was a walking bundle of nerves, sneaking glances at me when Ethan wasn't looking, a silent message in his eyes. "Did you check?" And I was the one wearing the mask, the smile stretched tight over a rapidly swirling whirlpool of panic and suspicion. I had to get online. I had to see the public records. But I couldn't do it while they were both in the house. Ethan saved me in a strange way. "Hey Al, I know you're tired from the drive, but I booked us a tea time for later this morning. Want to hit the driving range first, loosen up." Alex shot me a quick, panicked look, probably fearing I was about to crack under the pressure, but I gave him the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. "Okay, go." "Yeah, Ethan, that sounds good. Need to wake up those muscles," Alex mumbled. As soon as they backed the car out of the driveway, I flew to my laptop. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. Public municipal records. Property tax assessment. The address of that old abandoned lot in upstate New York that Ethan's great-aunt owned. It took me 20 minutes of frantic searching, navigating obscure government websites and cross-referencing names. And there was. Not under Ethan's name. Not under Ethan Miller, which is his full legal name. But under the Millbrook Trust. I scrolled down to the name of the trustee, E.J. Miller. Ethan John Miller. The breath left my lungs in a sharp gasp. Alex hadn't lied. The farm was still owned by Ethan. The date of the last recorded sale? A transfer from the Great-aunt's estate to the Millbrook Trust. Not a sale to a developer. Just an internal transfer that kept the property and its ownership secret. My fingers, cold and clammy, hovered over the next link. Assessed value and income records. I clicked it. The property wasn't dormant. It was classified as commercial rental income. And the listed tenant was Greenscape Nurseries. Alex said a commercial nursery. The trust was pulling in $4,000 a month in rent. $4,000. For 10 years. That is a truly staggering sum of money that had been flowing around the periphery of our marriage, completely hidden from me. I gripped the edge of my desk, trying to stay anchored in the reality of my sunny, quiet home, even as the walls started to tilt. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a few $100s hidden away. This was a systematic, long-term deception involving a significant amount of money, nearly $500,000 over 10 years. Money that should have gone toward debt, toward our future, toward us. The worst part was the meticulous effort. Creating a trust, setting up a separate bank account, forging a settlement statement, and maintaining the lie flawlessly for a decade. It required planning, secrecy, and a complete lack of moral conscience toward the person he supposedly loved most. The lie wasn't just about the farm, it was about Ethan's entire character. The stability, the pragmatism, the shared honesty, it was all an illusion he had carefully constructed and maintained. I felt a surge of white-hot anger followed by a terrifying hollow despair. I printed out the documents, the tax record, the trust name, the commercial income statement. I folded them tightly and shoved them deep into a box of old winter scarves in my closet, the last place Ethan would ever look. I needed to move cautiously. If he was capable of this lie, what else was he capable of? I realized Alex was my only ally, the only person who knew the truth. But why had he finally told me now? What was the trigger after 10 years of silence? Suddenly, I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. They were back. My panic spiked. I slammed the laptop shut and raced back to the kitchen, splashing cold water on my face, trying to erase the tears of betrayal that had sprung up. I had to be Olivia, the calm, oblivious wife. The war had begun and I needed my best camouflage. The next few days were an agonizing performance. Every interaction with Ethan felt like navigating a minefield. I had the printed evidence of his massive 10-year lie hidden in my scarf drawer, and every time I looked at him, I had to suppress the urge to scream the truth in his face. Alex left the next morning, but before he went, I managed to pull him aside for a single frantic minute by the garage door. I checked, I whispered, my voice trembling. The Millbrook Trust. Greenscape Nurseries. Real. 4,000 a month. Alex, why? He looked miserable, like carrying this secret was physically weighing him down. I can't say everything, Olivia. But please know this. The money isn't just sitting in an account. It's tied up with something else. Something Ethan needed to protect. I told you because he was planning to ask me to lie again for him, and I just couldn't do it. He's sinking deeper, and I saw how happy you were. I had to stop the lie from pulling you down too. Sinking deeper? What does that mean? What is the money for? I pleaded. He shook his head, his face tight with fear. I wish I could tell you. But I'm already risking too much. Just follow the money, Olivia. You've seen the trust. Now find out where that money goes. He gave me a quick, desperate hug and drove away, leaving me standing in the driveway, holding the weight of a secret that was quickly becoming lethal. I had the proof of deception, the farm lie. Now I needed the reason for deception. Ethan, meanwhile, had noticed my change in mood. I was quieter, more distant. He didn't ask if I was okay, he questioned my behavior. Olivia, you've been jumpy lately. Are you sleeping properly? He asked one evening while we were watching TV. I'm fine, Ethan. Just work stress, I lied, gripping the remote tightly. Well, you seem off. It's not like you to be so moody. You know how important stability is to us. Are you sure you haven't misplaced that paperwork for the retirement fund contribution? You left it on the dining table. This was his typical move, layered conflict and gaslighting. He wasn't comforting me, he was deflecting and subtly criticizing my competence. The man who was stealing $500,000 from our future was nitpicking my placement of a single document. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. The next challenge came when I tried to follow Alex's advice. Follow the money. The Millbrook Trust was its own legal entity, and the income wasn't coming into our joint checking account. It had to be going into a separate account, which meant Ethan had a secret bank account. I spent days reviewing our financial history, specifically the tax documents he prepared every year. Ethan always handled the taxes. He'd hand me the finished copies to sign, and I, trusting him completely, would sign them without scrutiny. Now I pulled out the last 5 years of returns, and there was, on Schedule B, interest and ordinary dividends, buried under several legitimate dividends from stocks we both knew about, was a tiny, easily overlooked line item, $15 in interest income from MB Financial Services. $15. It was such a small amount that it was mathematically insignificant, designed to fly under the radar. But if an account earned $15 in interest, it must hold a significant balance. I realized what he had done. He reported a minuscule amount of interest from the secret account just to make the tax forms technically accurate in case of an audit, but he never had to disclose the principal amount or the source of the income, which was the $4,000 monthly rent. It was financial sleight of hand, brilliant, cynical, and terrifying. My stomach knotted. I needed access to that bank. MB Financial Services, a small regional bank about an hour from our home. I started leaving subtle traps. I knew Ethan kept a small leather-bound notebook with financial passwords locked in his home office safe, the combination for which was our wedding anniversary. But I needed to get him out of the house for a sustained period. I suggested a weekend trip. Ethan, let's get away. Just a night down at the coast. It's been ages. He immediately bristled. A coast trip? Olivia, you know how much we spend on gas alone, not to mention the hotel fees. That money should be going into our 401k this month. We agreed to be fiscally responsible. His moralizing was like acid in my throat. I stood my ground. It's one night, Ethan. And I'm paying. Just please, I need a break. I've been exhausted. My insistence, which was very unlike my usual agreeable self, finally won him over. Not out of kindness, but out of a desire to stop my moodiness. He needed me to be back in my box of predictable contentment. The moment he agreed, I felt a massive surge of adrenaline. This was it. The night before the trip, I pressed him for details, trying to find a slip-up, a hint of the truth. Ethan, do you ever regret selling your great-aunt's land? It was a nice little piece of family history. He didn't even flinch. He just laughed a warm, paternal laugh. Regret it? Are you kidding? That scrubland was a drain. It was just a way to pay off the debt, honey. It was the smart, responsible thing to do. We don't hold on to things that don't serve a purpose. We're planners, Olivia. We're smarter than that. The ease with which he delivered the lie of conviction was horrifying. He truly believed he was the good guy, the financially prudent husband, even while he was actively betraying me. It made me realize that I wasn't married to a man who made a mistake. I was married to a deeply calculating fraud. The next morning we drove an hour to the coast. As soon as we checked into the hotel room, he wanted to go for a long 3-hour walk on the beach. Perfect. You go ahead, Ethan. I think I'm going to run a quick bath and relax my back. I'll join you in a little while. He kissed my cheek, completely unsuspecting. Don't take too long, sweetheart. You need the fresh air. As soon as the door clicked shut, I was already sprinting back to the car. Not to our room, but to the car. I had calculated the time. I had a 3-hour window. The bank was on the way to the coast. I was going to MB Financial Services, and I was going to find out where my $500,000 had gone. I didn't care if I had to charm, lie, or break a few rules. The rising drama was demanding a resolution. The quiet life was over, replaced by a desperate high-stakes investigation. The drive back toward the city, away from the coastal serenity, felt frantic and surreal. I was driving Ethan's reliable decade-old sedan, the very symbol of his supposed frugality, straight to the bank where he was hiding a massive fortune from me. My hands gripped the wheel, slick with sweat. I was no longer the docile, trusting wife. I was a woman on a mission of self-preservation. MB Financial Services was small, discreet, and exactly the kind of regional bank a clever person would use to conceal assets. I walked in, heart hammering against my ribs, and immediately felt out of place in my casual weekend clothes. I approached the teller, a young woman with a friendly, professional smile. Hi, I'm Olivia Miller. I believe I have an appointment with a Mr. Harrison. I lied smoothly, recalling the name of the bank manager listed on a piece of promotional mail Ethan had accidentally left out a few months ago. The teller checked her screen. Oh, Mr. Miller doesn't have an appointment scheduled today, ma'am. He stepped out for lunch. My stomach dropped. A dead end. I had only 2 hours left before I needed to be back at the hotel. I had to pivot. Oh, I apologize. He must have mixed up the time with his secretary, I said, trying to sound exasperated but privileged. I'm actually here regarding the Millbrook Trust. My husband manages it and we are updating the beneficiaries. I'm one of the signers, but I need a quick statement showing the current balance and the outgoing transactions for the last 6 months for the lawyer. I know the account number. I recited the number I'd memorized from the tax forms, even though it was only for the interest account. I was banking on 2 things. My sophisticated appearance and the tendency for smaller banks to prioritize personal service over rigid protocols. The teller hesitated, clearly wavering between protocol and the fear of upsetting a signer on a major trust account. I can't release detailed statements, but I can certainly confirm the balance and recent activity for you, Mrs. Miller, if you have ID. I handed her my driver's license. She typed for a minute, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Then she paused, her eyes widening slightly as she looked at the screen. She leaned in closer and lowered her voice. Mrs. Miller, I can confirm the balance is significant. Well over $450,000. And the outgoing transactions are very regular. Specifically, a wire transfer for $4,000 occurs on the 1st of every month. I felt a dizzying combination of vindication and terror. Alex was right. Ethan was a complete fraud. And where does that $4,000 go, if you don't mind me asking? It should be going to the investment firm we use, I prompted, feigning confusion. She looked around nervously. I can't disclose the recipient, ma'am. But I can tell you it's a recurring payment to an account named the Willow Creek Foundation in Wilmington, Delaware. The Willow Creek Foundation. Not an investment firm. Not a debt payment. A foundation. My mind raced. What kind of foundation? And why Delaware, a place famous for corporate anonymity? I scribbled the name and location onto a receipt. Thank you so much. You've been very helpful. My husband will follow up with Mr. Harrison. I raced back to the car, my heart a triumphant drum, even as a fresh wave of fear washed over me. I had the full picture now. The farm income, $4,000 per month, going to the Millbrook Trust, and from there, systematically wired to the Willow Creek Foundation in Delaware. The entire operation was designed for maximum secrecy. My next step had to be swift and devastating. I drove back to the hotel, my mind already charting the confrontation. I couldn't wait until we were home. I needed to do this here on neutral ground, away from his office, his computer, and the comfort of his environment. I walked into the hotel room just as Ethan was opening the door, expecting to find me in the bath. He looked surprised and then a little peeved. "Olivia, where were you?" "I waited for half an hour. I thought you were taking a bath." I looked at him, the man who had woven a web of lies around my life for 10 years, and for the first time, I felt no love, only cold, righteous fury. The mask came off. "I wasn't taking a bath, Ethan," I said, my voice dangerously level. "I was following your money." The color drained from his face instantly. He froze, his eyes wide and vacant. The change was immediate. The mask of the reliable, fiscally responsible husband shattered, revealing a shaking, terrified fraud. "What are you talking about, Olivia? That doesn't even make sense," he stammered, already resorting to the tired art of gaslighting. I pulled the printouts from my purse, the municipal record, the tax document, and the receipt with the bank information. I threw them onto the bed. Don't insult my intelligence again, Ethan. I know about the Millbrook Trust. I know you never sold the farm. I know you've been collecting $4,000 a month in rent from Greenscape Nurseries for the last 10 years. And just now I confirmed the account balance, over $450,000, and I know every month, you wire that rent money to the Willow Creek Foundation in Wilmington, Delaware. I watched him try to formulate a denial, his mouth opening and closing like a stranded fish. But the evidence was too overwhelming. The walls had closed in and he knew it. His denial quickly morphed into a desperate, panicked appeal. "Olivia, wait. You don't understand. It's not what you think. I wasn't stealing from us. I was protecting you. It's complicated. I was doing this for us." The lie was so pathetic, so clearly a last-ditch effort, that it only fueled my anger. "Protecting me?" I laughed, a bitter, harsh sound. "By defrauding me for a decade and lying about our entire financial standing? Tell me, Ethan. Tell me right now what the Willow Creek Foundation is. Is it another secret family? A gambling debt? I want the truth, and if I hear one more calculated lie, I am walking out of this door and calling a lawyer immediately." I stood there, arms crossed, the culmination of 10 years of deception hanging in the stale hotel air. This was the turning point. The quiet life was destroyed and all that remained was the agonizing truth. He finally looked at me, defeated, and the words that tumbled out were so far beyond anything I could have imagined, they sounded like they belonged in a cheap novel. It's money for my first wife," he whispered, the sound raw and broken. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. First wife. We had been married for 20 years. He was an only child. He had told me his father passed away and his mother remarried. He had never been married before me. I stared at him, unable to speak, waiting for the devastating explanation. The phrase hung in the air. "It's money for my first wife." I was late 40s. We had been married for 2 decades. The silence in that cheap hotel room was crushing, punctuated only by Ethan's ragged breathing. Your first wife?" I finally managed, the words barely a rasp. "Ethan, we met when we were 25. We've been together ever since. I know your entire history. You have never mentioned a first wife. Are you serious right now? Is this another one of your elaborate lies?" He collapsed onto the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. He was utterly broken, the polished facade completely gone. "It's the truth, Olivia. I swear on everything. Her name was Clara. We were married for less than a year, right before I met you. My family, they knew her. But we kept it a secret because I was young, stupid, and she was already terminally ill." My mind scrambled to put the pieces together. Terminally ill? Why the secrecy? Why the 10-year-long financial fraud now? He looked up, tears streaking his face. This wasn't the cunning financial planner. This was a man finally drowning in his own secrets. Clara had an extremely rare form of muscular dystrophy. We rushed the marriage because she wanted to experience that. She wanted to know what it was like to be someone's wife before she passed. But the treatment even then was astronomical. My family helped, but it bled us dry. When she died, I was left with mountains of debt, far more than the MBA loan. That was why I was so stressed when we met. I was barely functioning. He took a shaky breath. "The farm, my great-aunt gave it to me specifically to cover the final costs. I told you I sold it for the student loan because I was ashamed. I was ashamed of the debt, ashamed of the failure, and terrified you'd see me as this deeply damaged person who was only going to drag you down financially. The shame resonated. He had always been obsessed with appearing stable. But that still didn't explain the last decade of deceit. But Ethan, she died 20 years ago. The farm was supposed to pay off the debt then. Why did you hold on to it and keep generating income through a secret trust for 10 more years? He closed his eyes and the final devastating truth emerged. Because she didn't just die, Olivia. He had a sister, Sarah. Sarah was her full-time caregiver for years, and when Clara passed, Sarah was left with nothing. She couldn't work because of the time she took off for Clara. She was broke, sick herself from stress, and truly alone. I felt utterly responsible. I knew I couldn't give her a lump sum. It would look too suspicious. So I set up the Willow Creek Foundation. It's not a real foundation, Olivia. It's just a holding company that wires Sarah $4,000 a month for living expenses. It was an annuity, a private, secret severance package for a woman he felt a profound, decade-long debt to. I felt a dizzying mix of emotions. Profound betrayal followed by a sliver of pity. His motivation wasn't greed. It was misplaced, profound guilt and fear. He had chosen to save a ghost from his past at the expense of his living marriage. So you maintained a covert financial operation and lied to your wife of 20 years, all to avoid admitting you had a debt of guilt to your dying first wife's sister, I stated, articulating the absurdity. I tried to stop, he pleaded. The payments were supposed to end after 5 years, but Sarah had a major surgery and she called me desperate. I panicked. I couldn't say no. I was trapped, Olivia. The longer the lie went on, the bigger the hole became. I stood up, walking toward the window. The betrayal wasn't about another woman. It was about his inability to trust me with his vulnerability. He had prioritized secrecy over our partnership. Ethan, I said, turning back, my voice firm and final. You didn't protect me. You crippled me. For 10 years, I planned our retirement based on a fraudulent income statement. I denied us things, like this weekend trip or a new car, because you convinced me we needed to be fiscally responsible, all while sitting on $500,000 that should have been ours. Your noble intent is completely overshadowed by the depth and duration of your deception. The resolution was immediate and clear. There was no going back. The trust was shattered beyond repair. I can't do this, Ethan. I can't be married to a secret. I can't live in a marriage that is fundamentally a decade-long performance, I told him. I'm calling my sister to pick me up. I want you to sell the farm immediately. Use that $450,000 to hire a financial planner and set up a legitimate, capped annuity for Sarah, one that ends in 2 years. Then you can figure out what to do with the rest. We will divide our existing assets and we will get divorced. He didn't argue. He knew I meant it. He just nodded, his face stained with shame and defeat. I understand, Olivia. I am so sorry. I left him in that hotel room, walking out on 20 years of marriage and a lifetime of trust, clutching the printouts of his secret empire. The twist and closure is that I didn't become bitter. After the dust settled, the divorce was quiet and swift. The farm was sold, Sarah was set up with a proper fund, and I got my share of the legitimate marital assets. I was free. Free from the illusion of the perfect life. I moved into a small condo, started a new job, and embraced the absolute freedom of complete transparency. I didn't have to perform anymore. My quiet life had been flipped upside down, yes, but in the upheaval I found a strength I never knew I possessed. The betrayal hurt, but the subsequent liberation was exhilarating. I realized that Ethan hadn't just lied to me. He had been living in a suffocating cage of his own making, unable to share his shame. I escaped the cage. He was still stuck. I'm now 48, vibrant and truly stable. Stable because I know the truth about my life and my finances. My new beginning wasn't easy, but it was honest. And that, I realized, was the most valuable thing of all. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you look closer at the foundation of your own life. If you enjoyed hearing the story of how my life was flipped upside down, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment. Tell me, if you were me, what would you have done with the $450,000?